Welcome to Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability Conference, Takeaways and Looking Ahead, presented by the Seattle Cultural Accessibility Consortium at CSC, and we are fiscally sponsored by SHMPAC. My name is Elizabeth Ralston, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a white woman with short, wavy silver hair, and I'm wearing a black blouse today. I'm the founder of the Seattle Cultural Accessibility Consortium, and I'm also an accessibility consultant. Really excited to be here and share with you the amazing takeaways with our amazing panelists here today. First, I want to thank our sponsors, Arts Fund, Arts Raw, the Office of Arts and Culture, and the Seattle Foundation. Without our wonderful donors and funders, we would not exist today. And they have been a tremendous help in helping us create these programs so that we can be a resource to the arts community. So I want to do a land acknowledgement today. We would like to acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, and that we occupy this land. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with Indigenous communities, but serves as a first step in honoring the land we are on. And we have done some research into resources in which you can find out and learn more for yourself about what it means to be in an authentic relationship with tribes. I want to set the stage here. This is a safe space. You know, when we talk about accessibility, the fact that you're here is a big deal because you're committed to accessibility at your organization or personally. We respectfully request that everyone research and share resources proactively in an effort to broaden our collective knowledge. Please refrain from judgment. Speak your truth while knowing the truth of others may be different. Approach with curiosity. Recognize your privilege in yourself and others and accept that each person and organization operates at varying levels of accomplishment. Listen and pause to understand. Take responsibility for your contributions. Acknowledge that today's conversations may reveal bravery and may also spark discomfort. Gestures of kindness and offers of assistance are strongly encouraged. Thank you all. So our agenda today, we're going to do a welcome and talk about what is LEAD, and we're going to talk about the takeaways with our panel. We'll do some breakout groups so you can meet each other and network and find out all about your own takeaways and thinking about next year's LEAD conference. We'll do a share out and then we'll wrap up. So what is LEAD? What is the Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability Conference? It is a program that advances the full inclusion of people with disabilities in arts and culture. There's a focus on expanding the breadth and scope of accessible programming. It's an opportunity for professionals in the field to develop best practices and resources, engage in conversation with colleagues and experts from all around the world, learn practical methods for designing inclusive arts experiences and environments, and it's probably one of the most accessible conferences that you will ever attend. And I'll let the panelists speak for themselves about that. And while I'm wrapping up this piece, I would love for people to introduce themselves in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, your organization, and who you are, so we know who's on the call. Who attends LEAD? We have lots of different people coming. Accessibility and ADA 504 coordinators, CEA and I folks, community outreach, education and engagement, box office admissions, sales and marketing, visitor services, front of house and customer service management folks, venue operations, facilities designers and production, human resources and volunteer management folks, and general management and administration. So we have a wide cross section of folks who are attending the conference. And there can be people with disabilities, there can be people without disabilities, there's people from a wide range of backgrounds. So we have our attendee panel, and each person will be introducing themselves. We will be talking with Alexander Jones, Emily Lawson, Miles Strager, and Molly Squires. Please join Lead in 2025. It's going to be August 18th through 22nd in Cleveland, Ohio. Yay! Of course, it won't be as nice as Seattle, but you know what? Cleveland's a great place, so be sure to get yourself to Cleveland. And the registration will open 2025. And here's the website. If someone can put that in the chat, that would be great. It's accesslead.org, and there will be updates on this website. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can go ahead and get the panel up and running. So I'm going to pin everybody here so that we can see folks. I hope. So you may have to spotlight yourself again, Tammy, but let's see what happens when I pin everybody. Okay, Molly, here we go. While I'm pinning folks, I would like to ask panelists to introduce themselves. So, Alexander, why don't we start with you?
Hi all, Alexander Jones, he, him pronouns, and I'm the Learning Accessibility Specialist at Woodland Park Zoo. I'm a white male with a brown beard, black rimmed glasses, and brown hair. I'm wearing some headphones right now, and I'm presenting from an office here at Woodland Park Zoo.
All right, let's have Emily go next.
Hello, my name is Emily Lawson. I use she, her, or sha, the Filipino gender neutral pronoun. I have black hair with silver hair lights. I'm wearing lavender eyeglasses, a black long sleeve shirt, and a red and white woven choker necklace with dangling gray beads. And I work as the Historic Preservation Program Manager at For Culture, and I'm the National President Emerita of the Filipino American National Historical Society.
Molly.
Hello, my name is Marley. I am the Annual Fund and Events Manager at Seattle Children's Theater. My pronouns are she, they, and I am a white femme person wearing a blue and yellow striped turtleneck with glasses and my hair up in a bun, and I have hearing aids.
Awesome. And Miles, saving the best for last.
Hi all, my name is Miles. I use he, him pronouns. I work at Pratt Fine Arts Center. I have 3 job titles, so bear with me. I'm the studio manager for the Jewelry and Metals department. I'm also the studio manager for the Stone Yard, and I'm also the accessibility coordinator. So I am a white male. I have red hair and a red beard. I'm wearing a blue polo shirt today and thick brown rimmed glasses.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I have been to, let's see, I think the Seattle conference was my 4th conference. I've been to 3 other conferences in the past, and I'm curious to know from all of you, if this is your first lead conference, if not, what other conferences have you been to? So let's start with Myers.
This was my first lead conference. It's probably because it was in Seattle that I was able to go, which was wonderful. I have not been to many other conferences, especially in accessibility. I've been to a couple arts administration conferences here in Seattle, but that's about my extent for conferences.
Awesome. Molly?
This year was my first lead conference, and it was very exciting, wonderful to be a part of. This year has also been my first year as a member of the SCAC. So I'm also very new to events like this in general.
Thank you. Alexander.
Sorry, just trying to find my unmute. This was my second lead conference. I first went in Boston in 2023, and typically the conferences I attend are AZA conferences, so the Association for Zoos and Aquariums. The recent one was just last week in Calgary. So I'm more used to more zoo specific conversations and not conversations specifically around accessibility.
Emily.
First, I want to thank you, Elizabeth, and the SCAC for awarding me a scholarship to attend the 2024 LEAD conference, which was my first ever LEAD conference, which was so nice in my hometown. And I usually attend Asian American Studies conferences, or next month I'm attending the Pass Forward Historic Preservation Conference. And we just hosted the Asian Pacific Islander Americans and Historic Preservation Conference here in Seattle 2 weeks ago.
Fantastic. And I have to do a little bit of a bragging thing because Alexander got the young what was it called, the Emerging Young Professional Award at least this year. Yay! Everybody give a hand to Alexander. I'm very proud of Alexander. Sorry to put you on the spot. And Alexander and Molly are both part of the Seattle Cultural Accessibility Consortium Committee. So they've been an instrumental part of helping us, with our planning and programs and strategic direction of the organization. So thank you for that. All right, so here's the exciting part. This is why everybody came to hear what you have to say. But what I'm gonna go around and ask you, what are a couple of your takeaways from LEAD? What were some of the things that you learned that you thought, wow, this is really impactful and inspiring for me, and I want to go back to my organization and make that change, or I want to tell somebody else about it. So let's start with Emily. What were your takeaways?
Thank you. I had so many takeaways. I'll just try to pick my top ones. I really appreciated the keynote and plenary sessions. Apparently the first time that LEAD had Native Indigenous speakers. I really loved the interactive exercises and the slides and handouts and the resource sections of the app. Really, really helpful. And For Culture, our organization sponsored a lunch meeting with local members of the Washington Cultural Funders Collaborative and colleagues from similar funding agencies in Raleigh, Massachusetts, Illinois, and even Ohio, the next host of the next conference. And we learned that many of those agencies offer scholarships to organizations to attend LEAD. They follow up with stipend and grants to implement what they learn. And I want to know if that's being done here in Seattle or King County or Washington State. And if not, then how can we at For Culture work together with SCAC and others like ArtsWA or the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture or Arts Fund to make that happen? We had a share out at For Culture the other day on Thursday, and my colleagues from our racial equity team and I would like to collaborate with all of you to increase accessibility and inclusion, not only at our workplace, but in the cultural sector through our existing and new funding programs like Doors Open, Cultural Services Grants, which will open next year. And we'd like to send staff to the next year conference as well, or bring Betty Siegel, the conference director from the Kennedy Center, to Seattle for maybe training workshops next year. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. How about you, Miles?
Yeah, so I think going into it, I was really excited about taking my past knowledge and kind of bringing a lot of like moving forward with directions from information that people were giving and the resources that a lot of people had about how to use my knowledge and move forward with it, because I think that was my biggest hurdle with bringing back to my organization what I was going to do. I think as the week went on, I was really overwhelmed with all the information and all the tasks that I felt like I needed to do to become fully accessible. But I think my biggest takeaway was somebody said in one of the sessions, start small and do it right. And that was what I kept thinking every time I got overwhelmed with this mountain of accessibility and potential for accessibility that we could do, was just start small, do it right, have people feel good about what you're doing, come back and into your space. And that made it seem a lot more obtainable, manageable. It helped me start things small in a small scale. And that was really wonderful. I think a lot of the things that we do at Pratt Fine Arts Center are very niche, and we were talking about accessibility with like glass blowing or metal smithing, things like that, and just the amount of resource that was in that room. I can't remember the number, but I think we almost had between 900 and 1,000 people in the conference itself, and just being able to ask like, hey, does anybody work with glass and has experience with accessibility, and just having people go, oh, I think somebody at this place had something to do with that, and having the resource over here, and just being able to like ask these questions was just a huge eye-opening experience. And just having those resources at your fingertips was one of the best experiences. That was great.
And you hit on a really important point about starting small, and I think that one of the things that we realize is that people really appreciate having a plan to start with, because it can get very overwhelming trying to figure out where to start. And I'm going to make a plug for this later, but SCSC is going to have a deep dive day conference #2 later this fall. I'll tell you more about that later, but we are going to be focusing that on how to get started, how to get started in building a plan. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I mean, even just expressing my concerns in those spaces about like, how do I get started? And then people being like, well, do you know about this online tool that can make a plan for you? And it was like, no, I never heard about that. And just, I mean, the amount of resources, which is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and not having to reinvent the wheel
Yeah,
is really
exactly.
important too.
Yeah, and you're
Absolutely.
not alone in it. So that was wonderful.
Exactly, you're not alone, and that is key
Mhm.
when it comes to working in accessibility. It can feel like you're the only person doing the work in your organization.
Yeah.
How about you, Molly?
I will keep this brief because I only got to attend a portion of the whole conference, but I think one of the biggest things for me was, I think related to what Miles was saying, but especially just sort of like emotionally filling my cup and being around so many individuals who had so many different types of disabilities, and like sharing space together and giving a lot of focus and energy to this topic that so often feels like it just easily gets forgotten and left to the wayside, was really phenomenal to be a part of, and I think goes a long way to keeping this work going, because it's easy to experience burnout. And so getting to be a part of this shared space where everyone has these similar goals, and there's often not a space to talk about them. I think, yeah, just did a lot for my mind and my heart in terms of keeping up the energy of, even like Miles said, sometimes a small step is still a really significant one.
Yeah, I think you touched on something important, Molly, is that sense of belonging somewhere. And I think that what this conference does for many people with disabilities is it really has a sense of like, I belong here because I feel seen, my needs are taken care of. Like for me, I see that there's captioning in every session. So I don't have to worry about, leaving early or coming late or figuring out, well, what can I choose because everything is going to be accessible to me. Thank you for that. Alexander.
I feel like everyone so eloquently put so many of the points of why I love LEAD. One, I think to your point, Elizabeth, is that LEAD does a fantastic job of modeling accessibility just as a representation for all the attendees and how accessibility can be orchestrated from a conference perspective, but also like, oh, I can apply this in practice in my own in own space, whether it's through presentations or providing closed captioning and ASL interpretation. How does it all work, right? And how does it all fit together? I would say too is that in cultural institutions, accessibility work is extremely isolating. A lot of us are either volunteers or one individual advocating for accessibility practices across the entire institution. And so to come to a conference at LEAD where you have folks with lived experience and also folks that are kind of working in that same space, it's not only invigorating, but also you have this ability to create like a cohort of folks that are working in the same space and bouncing ideas off. And I would say too, is that they're all in a broad spectrum of their own career, right? So they go anywhere from your entry level all the way up to the executive level. And so you really get to interact with a broad spectrum of folks in their career path within accessibility.
Great, thank you, Alexander. Yes, it's really interesting seeing where people are in their journeys, and everyone is at a different place in their journey. And I feel that LEAD does a remarkable job of modeling, like you say. And we were just in a meeting yesterday with someone who had been to LEAD for the first time, and he said, this was the most accessible conference I've ever been to, and I have not been to, and I've been to a lot of conferences, and none of them come close. And this really should be the standard at every conference or every event that you go to. It should be accessible. And I think that was a real light bulb moment for this person, and I think all of us can be allies, when we go to a conference. If we see something that is not very accessible, maybe we can speak up more about that and say, hey, what can we do to make this more welcoming and inclusive? And someone, I think, on this call said, I can't remember who it was, I think it was Alexis, said that she was so pleasantly surprised to find that there was a quiet space there and there's actually a bed in there that you can lay down and relax because conferences are tiring, right? You want to explode with all this information you're getting and all these people you're meeting. So I want to ask, before we move into a breakout room, are there any changes that you've made yet in your own practice, or your organization, or are there any changes that you're thinking of making? So I'll start with Alexander, sorry.
Perfect. Yeah, I think last year after Boston, I came away and really implemented a lot of different things, whether it was our disability ERG or creating, some lived experience perspective. So getting staff members the ability to advocate and provide their lived experiences to their colleagues. This year, I think I'm in the midst of creating a greater accessibility plan that is linked with our DEA action plan. So really integrating both what our organization has put as our strategic goals and trying to align that with the accessibility action plan as a means of creating kind of some work streams that make sense for the organization. So trying to align those, but I would say there's definitely more work to be done, and I'm kind of still processing that through at this point.
Fantastic. How about you, Emily?
Yeah, I think at my work at For Culture, we would like to look at what other funding agencies do in terms of like requiring accessibility checklists in their funding grants. Also, like I said earlier, would love to join your SCAC and also work towards, more funding towards accessibility and sending folks to LEAD.
Yes, I love hearing that from a funder. Absolutely. This is fantastic. Thank you. Miles?
Yeah, I think immediately after the LEAD conference, I don't know, in nonprofits, we always talk about having your fundraising hat on. I kind of switched to having a fundraising hat on, but also like accessibility goggles. In every conversation we have in staff meetings now, I make sure that I have my accessibility goggles on, whether we're talking about a contract for a gala space or talking about new programming. I'm always considering, okay, what does accessibility look like? I think that is just like a baby step into just having these conversations with the staff and kind of keeping that in the back of my head constantly. Something I'm working on, we're revamping our website and just kind of doing a full audit. And so I'm incorporating a lot more accessibility into that and what accessibility looks like in each of our studios, providing a lot more information on how to access our studios and our spaces on our website. And really, we are also working on a strategic plan for the next 5 to 10 years and incorporating a lot more accessibility in the foundational parts of it now, so that we're not reinventing, or I think a lot of the metaphor that was used, like adding blueberries later to the blueberry muffins. I'm trying to make sure that we have those blueberries now. And so getting that accessibility part into the plan as we're starting to implement it right now. And so even if it's just baby steps, kind of just slipping in accessibility language, asking for an accessibility budget next year, things like that, that are just kind of laying the foundations of bigger changes. So.
I love that you used that analogy of the blueberries because I
Yeah.
use that all the time
Yeah.
when I talk to clients because they talk about you have to start from the beginning instead of bolting it on at the end.
Yeah.
And so I use the analogy of the blueberry muffins.
Mhm.
When you make those muffins, do you put the blueberries in the batter at first, or do you put them on in the end?
Exactly.
On top, right? Which is better. It tastes better if they're mixed in, right?
Yeah.
It's a more enjoyable experience. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, so even if I'm on the sidelines throwing them in the batter as I'm going, they're still getting in there somehow. So
Great, thanks for farming there.
yeah.
Molly,
I think right now we at the Seattle Children's Theater are really focused on taking a lot of the accessibility efforts that we have recently started implementing sort of at a base physical level. This summer, we went through a really, really big construction upgrade of our lobby and some of our theater spaces to literally make them more physically accessible. And now the next step in that is pursuing from a marketing standpoint, welcoming everybody into this new space and making sure that these new options are known to individuals who maybe didn't feel welcome in the space before because of the limitations, and now spreading the word about that. We previously have had individually accessible performances for ASL interpreters and audio description and sensory sensitive performances. And this season, we're going to test out access days where we bring those different elements together into one performance so that if families come into the theater with different access needs, that they can all come to the same performance together. So our next big step right now is like really getting all of that out there and making sure that now that those foundations are in place, that people have access to the information that things are changing.
that sounds amazing. If I may, I would love to share one thing I learned or experienced. CAC is working on creating an audio description training program that will implement early in 2025, and I attended a session on audio description training and got a lot of great information about thinking about what the goals of the program are and what kind of training we want to do. And they had some great exercises where we had to actually describe a photo that we saw. And it was actually more challenging than I thought. And everybody at my table had a different perspective on what that photo entailed. So very important to consider. Also intersectional identities of the people that you're serving and making sure that that's incorporated in the training program. And finally, the Roam Around was an event that I was really happy to see pull off because it made me realize that organizations here in Seattle are really hungry for feedback from people coming in to see their accessibility offerings, and they're also really interested in what other organizations are doing. So it was great to be able to have open the doors to the public and get this great feedback. So excited about that and thinking about how can we continue this to create a cohort of organizations that's interested in learning from one another. So it's already 2:35, and I know that you would love to network with folks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unpin everyone and start putting people in breakout rooms. And what I'd like for you to do in your breakout room is to introduce yourself and your organization, and if you've attended LEAD, did you attend LEAD this year? If not, what conference did you attend? And then also talk about what were some takeaways that you had. So thinking about those takeaways and sharing and making sure that everyone had time to go around and share what takeaways are. So let's see. I'm gonna put this in, put you in breakout rooms, and I will feel free to move yourself to a different room. Let's see, Tammy. Let me know what room you're in, and then I will make sure that you're in the room with the interpreter. All right, here we go. So we have about, let's see, 10 minutes or so, and then we'll all come back. And I'll make sure I send a broadcast message. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a productive discussion in your breakout rooms. We have a few minutes to share. Please come off mute and share something that you heard from your group that you thought was interesting or intriguing, or share with the group something that you have learned. So let's come off mute in the next few minutes and either share something or you can ask a question of one of the panelists. Any thoughts?
Hi, I can share. I'm not seeing the gallery. Let me see if I can can you hear it or see me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So towards the very end, I was recalling how this one line that Andrea Kovich has said in her presentation on a panel during the conference, perfectionism is a tool of ableism. And that had totally blown me away on that personal level, where internalizing disability oppression, if you will, but also as someone, I think Christine just mentioned, to dovetail that in our conversation, white supremacy also is a tool of ableism, but also of perfection, like that perfectionism is embedded in white supremacy. And that is such an important conversation. And it was a great doorway in to talking about the conference with a lot of people when I got back.
Thank you, Judith. Anyone else?
I would just share from our group, I had a really good conversation with some folks, and some of the takeaways I had from it that I might have not considered around accessibility is those short-term events or those really brief times where you welcome in a performer and how do you build in accessibility around that. I think the really unique space of cultural institutions is that we are so varied in how we interact with guests, and I think it makes accessibility challenging. And so all the resources and information we can share with each other is beneficial in creating accessibility plans for ourselves.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexander. Are folks excited about LEAD for next year? Is anyone planning on going to Cleveland? I see some nodding. Awesome. Was there anything that felt hard or challenging for you as you went to LEAD, or something that was inspiring or positive? Brian, Jeremy, Aaron, anybody?
Sure. I think that this was my first LEAD conference, and as some of the panelists mentioned before, it was the most accessible event I'd ever attended. And so I think that that was incredibly eye-opening to show how much can be done and how accessibility for anyone is accessibility for everyone. And so, you know, this is not something that's going to other anyone or ask them to, we'll go over there for if you need X, Y, and Z accommodation. If we just offer it all, then we all get to experience this stuff together. And I'm hopeful that we can continue to upgrade our accessibility offerings at the Symphony, and LEAD conference was a great way to get started on that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Christine has your hand up.
Yeah, something about what Aaron just said reminded me that I forgot to say this in my breakout room, that I found myself wondering where are all the artists at this conference to learn to embed this accessibility within their work from the creative beginning. I'm an audio describer, so I'm already thinking about, okay, how can theater, dance, whatever, integrate audio description within their own performance piece that renders my job unnecessary. And that's the ideal. So I was very curious why there were, I mean, it's great that there were so many organization representatives about how, okay, how can we pop the blueberries on top now that we have the goods and we want people to experience this arts and culture? But where were the artists to learn how to do that from the beginning and think about that in their process? I'm also a theater artist.
Thank you, Christine. And I can respond to that real briefly. But artists are not a target population for this conference, and this is a piece of feedback that we have given the LEAD organizers, that it would be great to feature more sessions around, you know, integrating artists with disabilities in the whole planning process of making organizations accessible, and having more sessions around that, and showcasing artists with disabilities. We are running out of time, unfortunately. I would love to have more time to network with all of you, but hopefully you got a taste of what networking in one of these sessions is like, and we hope to have more of these in early next year. So I want to say that SCSC asks that you consider making a donation to support our mission in future workshops. And I think Alexander is going to put the link in the chat. Together, we can increase accessibility with the help from our community. All these donations really help us put on workshops like this. And it's bit.ly/SCSC Shunpike. Thank you. And then we have an upcoming event, Deep Dive Day Conference, and spaces are limited. So sign up as soon as the link comes out. November 19th from 8:30 to 12:30 at the Woodland Park Zoo, and the registration will open sometime in October. And it's called Calling All Accessibility Advocates, Building an Accessibility Plan for your organization. And it should be fantastic. We're lining up the speakers right now, and we're going to have some great ones talking about buy-in, getting engagement from disability communities, and other great topics. So in our community, all of this is going to be on the PowerPoint, which you have access to, and we love participation from all of you. So please join our community. And Alexander, if you can put the survey in the chat, that would be fabulous. We love feedback from our community. What are our workshops like for you? How can we improve? So please fill out this survey when you have a chance. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next workshop. And thank you to our access providers, Tammy and Heather, who's in the background, and to our wonderful panelists. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.